Okay, so let's start the session about the European Accessibility Act. My name is Vayia Malamidou. I work as an accessibility consultant for AbilityNet. And a very quick kind of introduction of why I'm here talking about the European Accessibility Act. From a personal point of view, as a national of a country that it is still in the Union, because Brexit didn't happen, living and working in a country that is not anymore a member of the Union, because Brexit did happen, I just felt that I need really to bring myself up to speed with the directive, just so that the legislation is not really all Greek to me when I work. From a professional point of view, as I'm working every day with a very thick copy of the WCAG technical standards on my desk, I thought, because it is quite a heavy thing, I thought I will add something that's quite fun. So I printed out a copy of the European Accessibility Act to add to my desk. So today, we've already heard that accessibility strategy and education are all factors that drive change. But we also heard from Susanna that legislation does lead change. And that's why we are going to talk about the European Accessibility Act. And we are asking the question, the European Accessibility Act, are you ready? Don't worry if you are not ready. We still have 7 months and 14 days. Okay? So this session is going to focus on the way organizations are preparing for it, what kind of issues they are facing. We're not going to talk about the technical details, but we are going to look at the bigger picture, things like how to connect with various teams when you are changing processes perhaps in your organization, how to actually work closely with various teams like product managers, product owners, developers, designers, etc. So we want to know who is leading this work and how the directive is actually changing processes. And we want all of you to actually come away from this session feeling much more confident as leaders for change. So it is a chance to actually hear directly about our panelists' experience, the current kind of challenges that they're facing, but also ask for top tips so that others can take away. So I'm going to start with Ulrike, who is joining us remotely. So please introduce yourself, first of all. Tell us a little bit about your role, and then tell us what the European Accessibility Act means for you and how are you preparing for it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Vayia. So good afternoon, everybody, also in the room. My name is Ulrike Haltrich. I'm based in Germany and I work for Sony Europe in Germany, mainly in the field of technology standardization. Thank you for allowing me to participate remotely in this panel. So I've been working in the area of accessibility for many years already, starting from involvement in industry associations, namely Digital Europe, many years ago. And what accessibility means actually for us, so for Sony, it's Sony has a big portfolio of products. Also pictures, music and games are part of the corporation. And the European Accessibility Act is a new directive in Europe. And we have already obviously some experience to roll out regulations across other areas such as safety and environment, and also accessibility in the US. But we need also now to include accessibility requirements into our usual business processes for Europe. TechShare focuses mainly on digital accessibility, but the European Accessibility Act will also cover ICT products, and for us, this means it includes television, it includes mobile phones, and also services that we offer on these products. So in the scope of the products of the EAA, there are also e-commerce requirements, packaging requirements. We have to provide user information, just to name a few. And so the scope for Sony is quite wide. Thank you.
And what are you doing to prepare for the changes that this directive is bringing to your organization?
Well, for already a number of years, we're discussing the details and preparing across all related teams. So we coordinate the activities in each region, and we have obviously an interface through our Accessibility Promotion Office, which we also established in Europe, to our Tokyo headquarters to align details and also processes. And besides this office for accessibility promotion, we also need to involve our teams in legal and compliance to ensure alignment and also common understanding of the upcoming requirements. And especially the reference or the coming standard, harmonized standard EN 301549, which I'm sure you're all familiar with, has been challenging for us to align a common understanding. So in terms of what is intended and how to meet those requirements, especially in a multinational organization like we are. And as for the example of television, we saw a need to develop a technical report, which has been supported by ETSI. And this technical report provides a guideline for the application of EN 301549 for digital televisions. We worked across industry there, and obviously ETSI members, to align our interpretation and also expectations of the EAA. So Sony takes the EAA and related details from the EN, but also VCAC, and prepares also internal standards or internal technical documentations that are to really make a common understanding across also all business units in Sony, and that we harmonize and align interpretations, processes, and also record keeping for Sony. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I go next to you? And the question is, again, please introduce yourself, your role, what you're doing in your organization. What does EAA mean for you? What are you doing to prepare?
Sure. So I'm Mark Lapole. I'm Director of Accessibility at eBay. EAA means quite a few things for us, but the main thing that I keep coming back to is it feels like it's going to be this bit of catalyst for change. And I think Ramona said earlier this morning that she doesn't view her work as rocket science or anything like that in change management, but for an org like eBay to get this regulation that it sets a broader expectation for all of our product teams, having that being a forcing factor within our company, I think is going to play a big role. And so I'm hopeful that the new regulation will help us really inspect our release practices or processes in general. eBay's been in accessibility for quite a while. I think we do a pretty good job. But the introduction of this in mid-2025 is really going to put a little bit more stress on our teams, I think. So some things we're doing internally to prepare for that. The theme yesterday that came out is probably not a surprise for a lot of us here, but the whole collaboration bit. So because of this, we've now gotten introduced to some new regulatory partners that we would not have previously, new legal partners. And they're not always aware of the work that we're doing as a small accessibility team. So there's a lot of sharing of information. So how do we use our influence, or at least just continue to raise awareness with teams maybe that weren't as close to product previously? But then we have to be open to understanding how we operate as a company when it comes to regulatory, which we may not have been familiar with before. So that's one area. Of course, informing leadership. We have to, it's been said multiple times yesterday and today, this morning, that leadership's not always as well aware of accessibility. We're kind of in our own bubble sometimes. So making sure that we extend that out and upward. And so just trying to understand how a regulatory act can find its way throughout our teams is going to be a large effort. And so over those 10 years that I mentioned, we constantly think about ways to inject accessibility throughout product managers' responsibilities, or design or development or testing, any of those processes. And then we build tooling on top of that to help with those teammates in that space, so that it just kind of shows up as part of their workflows, their day-to-day work, and it becomes part of what you do. I think Regine mentioned you're learning anything new, it takes some time to adapt. We have to be flexible and understand that there are some product teams that are going to be better at this than others. Working with them and continuing to build their knowledge and experience is great, but they're probably good. So maybe we spend more time with those teams that are newer to this. And then the last thing I'll mention is, this might come off a little odd, but for years we've been the bearers of bad news in some ways to product teams. We say to them, hey, user has complained about X, or their interaction with eBay wasn't the greatest. Now we're going to leverage our regulatory and legal folks to help us out with that messaging a bit, and just say, hey, this is a regulation the company has to abide by, or we're obligated to meet. We are a global company. We're available in these countries in the EU. How do those sites look for our users? What is that experience like? And so how do we engage with our design standards team? How does accessibility show up in in those design standards in our playbook, so to speak? And how does it show up in that automation or tooling or manual testing? So I think it's going to hone those experiences a bit more, and I'm hopeful it'll drive that change that we need, or renewed focus maybe is another way to put it.
Mm-hmm. Lovely. So you're doing that shift in all directions already.
It's a bit of that, yes. I mean, we've been trying to shift left for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe all directions is a good way to put that.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Mm-hmm.
Michelle?
So I'm Michelle Jacques, and I'm a senior product manager and accessibility specialist. I'm transitioning in roles, which is kind of a good, and companies, so I'm in quite a good space, leaving one, entering something else. For me, the EAA is about trying to make a level playing field that everyone can work towards. My experience in accessibility is often, as a product manager, I meet people who care on a spectrum, I guess is the way to describe it, depending on their experiences, their passion. Particularly if you're based in the UK, it's been one of kind of trying to drive it yourself in some instances because you care about that. And while that's great, and again, the random acts of accessibility kindness that was kind of referred to earlier is exactly that. But it doesn't give us a uniform playing field. It doesn't give us that level where everyone is driving towards. And I think for me, this is an opportunity for us in Europe to actually take things forward and for everyone to try and understand what that means in a broad sense. As far as preparing for it, I think what's been really difficult in my experience is actually trying to understand it, first of all, because it's really ambiguous in parts. Although it's a consumer-facing act and B2Bs kind of go, yay, so it doesn't apply to me, so I don't have to do anything. And that isn't the message that we should be leading with here. And although it's driving from a B2C perspective, there are the underlying elements of that, for example, if you have a CMS system internally, that you then deliver content out to consumers rather than just B2B. That CMS system or the content that you drive needs to be accessible, and you could potentially fall into the act because of that. And I think getting around this, what's the minimum I have to do? What is it that I'm expected to do to conform at this point is something that I'm really trying to not talk about. Whenever I'm asked about that question, it's, I without coming down really hard and going, well, this isn't what we should be doing, this isn't the approach. It's, well, what do you think? What do you think is the minimum that you could do in your team? What matters to you? Understanding the role that person plays and the small changes that they can make along the way in their roles. I think from as far as preparing, there isn't a strategy per se. It's just about trying not to lead with fear, which, when you start to talk about acts and conformance and governance and things like that, there is the stick element to it, and I appreciate that is important. But actually, changing hearts and minds it's not necessarily about leading with fear. It's about getting people to come with you and getting people to care about it because it's important, but also, for some people it's critical. While we talk about it being a great thing and having a great accessible experience improves the experience for everyone, and that's great, but actually it excludes people is more the importance for people. It's critical. And so we need to kind of understand that element of it as well. I should add, I am a 50-ish female. I have a short bob, despite Rachel Reeves destroying the bob. Apparently, I'm still trying to rock it. And my pronouns are she, her.
Thank you so much, Michelle. And I'm collecting positives as we go. We have positives in your organization. Michelle, you have also... you gave us a positive approach to how we are preparing for this, so it's fantastic and something really to celebrate. Over to you, Mike.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. My name is Mike Fooks. My audio description would be I'm wearing blue jeans, white shirt, late middle-aged male, and I've got a shiny forehead. But it's not all bad at all. I work for Elsevier. We are the biggest and the most trusted publisher of STEM content in the world, and I get to work in accessibility. And to trump it all, this week I've been officially registered disabled, so I feel well and truly part of the accessibility experience. That said, I've only been working in this space for a year, although I've got 30 plus years of experiences in project and program and change management. I think I had the project manager title first time mid-80s. It was only a year ago that our CIO, who I report to, tapped me on the shoulder and said, "What do you know about accessibility?" Not a lot. What do you know about the European Accessibility Act? Even nothing. And they said, "Well, we've got news for you. You better learn fast because you're good at delivering change. You've just come off of 5 years of success with mergers and acquisitions, which is all about change, hearts and minds, all the things that we've spoken about today. And we'd like you to pick up the European Accessibility Act and help us make sure that we're compliant." And that was the starting point. It's really, we heard the word earlier about fulcrum, and I'm using it as a fulcrum to surface all of the amazing work that others, some of you might know Ted Geese, who sometimes speaks, Simon Holt, who sometimes speaks at these types of events. These guys, and Nicola, who's in the audience, are the experts in our accessibility world. And I think part of my remit is to make sure that we surface the great work that they've been doing and make sure there's more of it for Elsevier. But specifically for the European Accessibility Act, what it means for us. There are two primary areas of focus and three significant challenges that I would call out. The two primary areas of focus are our content. We publish around about 4,500 to 5,000 books a year, a mixture of print, but obviously mostly online. And we publish somewhere just shy of 750,000 journal articles a year. And we've been doing that for decades and decades. We have a backlist, as it's called, of something like 90,000 ebooks. And even with all of the benefits of generative AI that we've heard about earlier on today, and not to be a fly in the ointment for some of the speakers, but Gen AI isn't there yet for us. It's just not capable enough for the precision that we need in our content. Our content is life-changing. It can be. You can imagine a scenario where a student learns the wrong medical procedure, or an engineer learns the wrong chemical formula, or whatever it is. And if our accessibility remediation brings about that level of error, it's critical. So we need large language modules to be kind of 99.999% accurate, and we're not there yet. So that causes a problem from a scale and a cost point of view, and a speed point of view. So that's our content area. And then the complexity of our environment. We've got 64 e-commerce type platforms that are in scope for the EAA. And whilst you've got standard operating environments and software delivery models and so on, they're also somewhat siloed. And affecting change in that kind of environment, making things compliant to a CAG is challenging. So those are kind of major focuses and some of the big challenges that we've got. We've set up a program, which I'm leading. We've got 12 work streams. We've got an accessibility champions function. We've got a tremendous team that I've already mentioned. I report to the ELT, and they're very vested in it and have made a public statement about us wanting to be the best in class publishing organisation as far as accessibility is concerned. So it feels like all of the big rocks are there. You know, that product development, rocks, pebbles and sands we talk about. It feels like we've got the big rocks in place, the pebbles are in place, and now we're starting to put the sand in the pot. And I'm pretty confident that we'll be well on our way to compliance by the deadline. Will we be 100% compliant? Probably not, but then I don't think anybody else will be. And I think it's, building that, defendable isn't the right word. That structure, the plan that you can clearly articulate, explain when you need to, if you need to, where you are. I think, based on the guidance we've had from our expert legal counsel, we're moving in the right direction.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. As you all have a very complex kind of work already doing it, preparing, and we have a little bit of time left, would you share with us perhaps a challenge or a concern or a worry that you faced, and definitely share with us one big tip to actually tackle this challenge, worry, concern when it comes to the EAA. So if we start this way and finish with Ulrike this time.
Sure.
So Mike?
Yeah, one of our biggest customer bases obviously is universities, libraries, students. And, we all know students can be quite militant. Elsevier, because of who we are, because of what we do, we can sometimes be a target. And I fear that accessibility the EAA and certainly the ADA Title II update that's coming in 2026, there's an opportunity there that could be exploited in terms of our reputation, our brand, what we stand for. And so one of the things that we do and that we need to continue to do and improve even more is what I like to call hug our haters, right? So where we have a detractor, where we have a problem where we need to remediate a case that we've not been as accessible as we could be, let's really lean into that and not just learn from it and all those kind of cliches, but let's really make that public statement that we've learned from it, that we've helped someone, and that make them part of making our offering to our customers better. Celebrate that success with the people that had the bad experience. So don't be shy of sharing those bad experiences, I would say. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Michelle?
I think for me it's the the balance or the conversation still around the risk and whether or not to work with compliance. As a product manager, I've been fortunate to be able to build accessibility into my product requirements. I've been a product manager for 8-10 years now. And so without being an accessibility specialist, I've been able to build that in. I'm a member of lots of external product groups, some very large, 800,000 global product managers. And when I approached the kind of leaders of these communities to say, you know, why aren't we talking more about accessibility? I always get the answer that the risk is still not enough. So the stick part or the punishment is not enough yet to actually drive accessibility. And I think while the Act allows each state to determine what it wants to enforce as a punishment, kind of provides, you can start to see the variance from, you know, €1 million as a punishment to jail on the opposite. It's, you know, you've got this huge scale of kind of, you know, a punishment for not being compliant. It's still not seen as enough. And I think that's, you know, the biggest worry that I have, that we're still not quite getting over the fact that actually we're going to focus on the compliance and the governance and the risk and how much could it cost me and could my company afford that? Maybe. So let's not bother. Right. So there's still that element to it. I think the tip that I would give is much like the theme of what we've really had today. And, you know, most of my conversations, I've worked in companies where leadership are not on board. I've emailed the CEO in some instances and said, hey, you don't know who I am, but this is important and this is why you should care. But I always start with the people in my network, start with the people who you can relate to the most. So if you're in product, if you're in design, if you're in finance, wherever it would be, start those conversations small. And one trick that I always use is when I speak to people, and I'm not sure about speaking to people, so maybe that helps. I ask them to recommend someone else I should speak to. I leave them one thing that they could do in their job today, not that's difficult, not that's going to take them a lot of training, just one thing that they can do today as our conversation finishes, and then give me one name. And so when I contact that person, I'm like, hey, John told me to call you because you're the person to speak to. And that really helps, right? It's an old sales trick. I used to be in sales, but it definitely works. So, you know, just kind of try and build your way that way. Start small. And with an atomic network, you can get there. And don't panic, I would say, would be my other bet.
All right, so two things come to mind here is be careful not to over-index on the short term of meeting a deadline for mid-25. We all know it's not over in June, so keep that in mind. And then as small teams, maybe internally, find your way to make sure that it's a sustainable practice, whatever you guys put in place. And the second thing I would say is it's sort of related to that, but don't over-index just on the regulatory bit. Always remember the gist of the whole thing is about people. And so it's pretty easy for us at eBay because our purpose is always about building communities and connecting people to create economic opportunity for all. So whatever you have to do to tie it to your internal mantra, mission, purpose, whatever that is, find a way to do that if you can. And if you can't, the only tip I will leave you with is stay calm, stay the course, be flexible. And, you know, we're all in this for the long haul. It's not like a short-term thing.
Thank you. And over to you, Ulrike.
Yes, thank you. So one of our concerns is that we see country transpositions in Europe that make small changes that need to be tracked and understood. Yeah, across 24 countries, there are slightly different transpositions of the EAA available. And then what is also a big concern to us is that the EN 301509 is not currently available. We're working in Etsy and trying to track those changes. But until the publication and enforcement date of the EAA, we won't have any any published standards. This is not only for the EN, but also for other standards, non-digital areas of the EAA, meaning packaging, and also another standard, customer support, which will be only available after the EAA enforcement date. So we have an understanding of the EAA. It has taken time to develop and align, and we wonder across 24 countries compliance confirmation if they are on the same page with us. So what I can only encourage really is members to join organizations like ETSI and other industry associations and work with experts to influence the standards and also develop the future standards, so that will help us to get a common understanding and interpretation of the EAA. Thank you.
Right, great. Thank you so much, Ulrike, Mark, Michelle, and Mike for joining the panel today. Thank you very much.